Betrayal, conspiracy, and a deal with the devil. Tonight on Alert View, the story that nobody else is willing to tell in its entirety. Britain's Prime Minister stands powerless in London, while his chief rival redraws the world's power map from Washington. More alarmingly, we expose the new allies lining up behind him in the shadows. What we will reveal tonight isn't just about politics, it's about a plot to sell off Britain's future to the highest bidder. Stay with us, because what's happening behind closed doors will change everything.
Welcome to Alert View, and that was no dramatic overstatement from Olivia. This is the grim reality of Britain in September 2025. The nation is anxious, families are struggling, and trust in our politicians is at rock bottom. And in the midst of this crisis, we find ourselves facing a political landscape more divided than ever before. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is throwing around accusations of scaremongering, but could this just be a smokescreen to hide a deeper, more profound failure?
Failure is a mild word for it, James. What we are witnessing is utter paralysis. Starmer is stuck in London, repeating the same lines over and over, while Nigel Farage isn't even playing on the same chessboard. He has abandoned Parliament, ignored his constituents, and flown directly to the world's center of power. Why? Is it conceivable that a British MP believes his political future and the country's future is decided in Washington and not in Westminster? That in itself is a stunning admission of impotence.
Let's break that down. Keir Starmer told the Mirror newspaper, "We're doing the work to make people's lives better." He's trying to position himself as the responsible statesman, the one working diligently behind the scenes. The problem with this image is that it completely contradicts what people are seeing on the ground. And when your opponent, Farage, is not only talking about these problems, but appears to be forging international alliances to solve them, Starmer's rhetoric sounds hollow, even laughable.
And here we get to the most utterly bonkers part of this, the part that no sane mind can process. This international alliance you speak of, let's give it its proper name, the Taliban, so that everyone watching now is absolutely certain they heard correctly. The regime that harbored al-Qaeda, the regime that oppresses women and lives in the Dark Ages, has issued a statement saying it would prefer to work with Nigel Farage. They see his plans for mass deportation as viable, and they want to cooperate. James, how on earth did we get to a point where a terrorist organization is a stakeholder in a domestic British political debate?
That is the multi-million-pound question, and it demonstrates either Farage's tactical genius or his absolute recklessness. He has put the British government in an impossible position. If they ignore the Taliban statement, they look weak. If they attack it, they give more credibility to Farage as a global figure who even rogue states will deal with. It's a diplomatic and security car crash of the highest order. What is the Foreign Office doing right now? Are they issuing a statement condemning Taliban interference in UK politics? The entire situation is a tragic farce.
And let's talk about the plan the Taliban found so appealing, the deportation of 600,000 human beings. Has anyone truly considered the logistics of this nightmare? 300 people every single day. That requires a colossal infrastructure of arrest, detention, and transport. Chartered flights taking off every few hours. Negotiations with countries that may not want these people back. Farage has earmarked £2 billion for incentives, which is another word for bribes, for foreign governments. Where is this money coming from? The NHS budget? Education?
More importantly, what is the cost to Britain's reputation? We have built our image over centuries as a bastion of human rights and the rule of law. This plan doesn't just bend those principles, it shatters them entirely. It tells the world that Britain is willing to abandon its core values for a quick fix to a complex problem, and this is precisely what makes Farage's trip to Washington all the more suspicious. He isn't just selling a policy, he's selling a new, darker version of Britain.
Which brings us back to Washington. Who is Farage really meeting? Sources are telling us he's not just meeting Trump's allies, but also executives from private security firms and gigantic lobbying groups. Could this massive deportation plan be a front for multi-billion-pound contracts that will go to these very companies? Is a humanitarian crisis being turned into a lucrative business opportunity? It would explain so much. It explains why he's ignoring Parliament, because the real deals are not being made there.
And that puts Starmer's scaremongering accusation in a completely different light. Perhaps Starmer is right, but he's aiming at the wrong target. The real scaremongering isn't in Farage's words, it's in his silent actions behind the scenes. The danger isn't in whipping up public anger, but in harnessing that anger to push through a hidden agenda that serves the interests of a global elite at the expense of the ordinary British citizen.
And meanwhile, Minister Bridget Phillipson appears on television to say that Farage benefits from whipping up anger. How naive can you get? Of course he does. That's populism 101. The question isn't why he's doing it, but why you, as the government, are completely incapable of offering anything to counter that anger. Why do your solutions always feel like too little, too late? The polls showing people trust Farage more than Starmer are a damning indictment not of Farage, but of the failure of Starmer and his government to connect with the people.
So we are facing a multi-front battle, a political front in Westminster, a diplomatic front in Washington and Kabul, and a media front for the hearts and minds of the British people. Starmer is losing on all fronts. He looks like a man of the past, using old tools in a modern political war, whereas Farage is the master of chaos, using social media, unexpected alliances, and shock and awe tactics to keep everyone off balance.
The end result? A power vacuum, right here in Britain. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does politics. And that vacuum is now being filled by forces we cannot control. Foreign powers, hidden agendas, and terrifying alliances. What began as a domestic political spat has now morphed into an existential crisis for the entire nation. Will our decisions still be made in Britain, or have we already handed over the keys to our future?
And so we leave you with this complex question to consider. What is the greater threat facing Britain today? The very real problems that Farage talks about, like illegal immigration, or the dangerous and undemocratic methods he's using to tackle them, methods that involve shady deals overseas and endorsements from rogue states.
Share your analysis in the comments. This debate must begin now, before it's too late. And we promise you, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Subscribe immediately to AlertView and hit that notification bell. We have more information on the Washington meetings, and we will not hesitate to expose it. The battle for the soul of Britain has just begun, and our job is to ensure it is not fought in the dark.